Greetings, nerdy list aficionados, and welcome back to Top 10 Nerd. You may have noticed that things are a little bit different around here. It's quarantine life, some things had to change, a lot of us were filming from home, I'm one of them. So with that out of the way, let's get into what we're going to be talking about today. We're looking at disasters, but natural ones. I'm going to say a bit more natural because it's very rare for superheroes to tackle purely natural phenomena, just based on their kind of structure. It's not as compelling for some readers as some of their other stories, but it can be. For some people, this is just a bit too uncontrollable, too close to real life, that something could just happen and all of a sudden you need Superman to swoop in. Too much, no thank you. I'm Sash and these are the top 10 natural disasters to hit the superhero world. Number 10, Krypton. The destruction of Krypton is a key part of the Superman mythos. Without it, we would not have a Man of Steel at all. It is this event that sends Clark, then Kal-El, hurtling towards the Earth. And when he gets to Earth, he becomes a superhero. Now, the destruction of Krypton has had multiple causes over the years, but there tends to be one theme running throughout, that it is a natural disaster predicted by Clark's father, Jor-El, who then was just ignored by the rest of the scientific community. Jor-El valiantly tried to bring attention to his findings, but by the time people paid attention, it was too late and the planet was already breaking apart. So it did just that, and it destroyed itself. This event would shape the Earth in more than just the coming of Kal-El, but with kryptonite, which would ironically become one of his only weaknesses, weakened by the very planet that spawned him. And so Superman would be haunted by this, a loss that he could not actually recall, a people he was part of but had no ties to. If written well, it could be quite compelling. There's a lot to work with when it comes to Superman's pathos, but you've just gotta think about it a little more outside of the whole he can punch his way through anything. Yes, he can, but he also has angst. Number 9, Ultimatum Wave. So if you have the power to manipulate the weather, that makes it natural, right? You are the natural disaster. You are manipulating it and you're natural. Reach with me. Do this so we can talk about the Ultimatum Wave, the key event of Ultimatum. A storyline that is infamous at this point. After snapping Xavier's neck to show that he meant business, Magneto would use his magnetic powers to reverse the poles of the Earth. This also involved Thor's hammer and a disaster device called the Ultimatum Wave. They classify this one as a doomsday device, but I mean, Magneto used his powers to make it happen, just saying. This was a wave that would hit New York and kill thousands. And also because it's Marvel and this happened in New York, this would put a lot of heroes out of commission. In this confusion, villains would reign, and many heroes would die brutally. In fact, it's for this that the series is known, the horrible, brutal deaths of the heroes within it. This is what got the series labeled as disgusting and gratuitous. Like, of course, we have to mention the Blob eating the Wasp. Just look, if they didn't want people to talk about it, they shouldn't have done it. Number 8, Crisis on Infinite Earths. In the DC universe, the entire multiverse is monitored by creatures known as, well, monitors. They are super aptly named, right to the point. Well, the anti-monitor decides that it's time to destroy the multiverse. Really, this was an editorial decision, but that's the canonical reason. And so the multiverse would collapse in on itself in the 1985 event that was meant to solidify all of the timelines and continuities into one thing. This way, we would just have all the characters we wanted to surviving on one Earth, even though that would also turn out to be a bit of a mess and there would be some interesting retcons. There would also be some dramatic deaths, like Supergirl's, because Superman had to be the last Kryptonian, but actually, that was the editorial reason, obviously not the narrative one. Barry Allen would also run himself to death, but in a way that he could come back. Creation being undone by a rogue creator. Yes, that is a natural event. As natural as the multiverse itself. Cosmic beings won't leave it alone. Just look at what's going on with Perpetua and the dark multiverse and all of that stuff. Apex Lex. That's done now, isn't it? Heroes living at the whims of cosmic forces. Number 7, 0 Hour. People talk about the death of Superman. They talk about the reign of the Supermen. But very few people talk about 0 Hour, which was actually a big event back in the day. This was the event that centered around a villainous Hal Jordan, at the time Parallax. Pre-Fear symbiote retcon, so he had just gone around killing all those people. It was his own fault, we were acknowledging that. So here we have Hal Jordan using waves of entropy to destroy the universe. Basically, he wants to unmake it so that the destruction of Coast City never happened. Because when that happened, not only did lots of people die, but his family too. The destruction of Coast City is what unbalanced him in the first place, made him kill the rest of the Corps, turned him into Parallax. The heroes are able to stop this, but the timeline that they remake is not exactly the same, because if DC can retcon retcon a thing, they will retcon a thing. I mean, if you have the opportunity, why not take it? 5G, I mean, if that even happens now. Also, I held up 10 fingers. I don't know what was up with that. This event was huge, again, as I stated, and it went on for some time, which is why it's funny that so few people remember it or talk about it. Number 6, Superman, hurricane relief. Now, if there's one thing comics love, it's a good old-fashioned PSA, a public service announcement. Your favorite hero is lecturing you about how to do something. Fire safety, don't do drugs, take your asthma medication. And in the case of Superman, donate to hurricane relief, please. I mean, if there's any superhero that's gonna lecture you, you can imagine it would be Superman. Superman is most often the hero seen dealing with natural disasters. They're usually vague and nondescript, but this is because it's been explained in canon that he also looks after the rest of the world, wherever he is needed. It's part of his character that he doesn't just confine his rescue attempts to one place. Attempts, he usually succeeds. He will go wherever he is needed. It's actually one of the parts of Dawn of Justice that they did right. One of the few parts. I know some people love it. I own this movie. No shade. Superman. Hey, you never know. Mid-disaster, he may just show up. And then he'll tell you to go donate to hurricane relief. Number 5, Xanshi. This planet was destroyed because of the anti-life equation, which is entirely natural. It's math. Darkseid seeks this equation to subjugate the free will of the universe. Again, it exists, natural phenomenon counting. It is also vital that Darkseid does not get this formula. This planet, once impacted, began to experience changes in weather and dramatic fluctuations. Also, people got sick. But John Stewart, one of the Green Lanterns, was convinced that he could handle the situation all by himself, to the point where he even wrapped John Jones, the Martian Manhunter, up in a construct and left him out there. I mean, there was fire going on, but at the same time, a lot of it was, I can do it by myself. But when John got there, he was horrified to discover that there was a bomb by the planet's core, and it was yellow, and at that time Green Lanterns couldn't affect yellow still, and so there was nothing that he could do about it, and it exploded, and the planet exploded. Would this have happened if John Jones was there? I guess we'll never know, will we, John? This explosion, by the way, sent the planet hurtling into the sun. Number 4, the Dabari versus the Dark Phoenix. Along the same vein, we have the incident with Jean Grey and the Dabari. And the Phoenix. This would result on her being put on trial by the Shi'ar because this planet was part of their empire. This planet and all the people on it were destroyed when the Dark Phoenix needed to replenish her energy, went and fed upon their sun, just drained it, which obviously was not good for the life in that solar system. Ultimately, it destroyed their planet and them. This was back when Jean still was the Phoenix, pre the whole Phoenix is a force retcon and Jean was in a cocoon under the ocean. Still not a huge fan of these retcons. Still not a fan of these retcons. Let Hal and Jean live with the guilt. But that's just me. This loss of the sun. If the Phoenix is a natural force, well then, this is a natural disaster. Number 3, the Midgard serpent attacks the Earth. Norse mythology and the reality of it is just a fact in the Marvel universe. These things just exist. Yggdrasil, Thor, all the rest of the gods, and of course that means the Midgard serpent, wrapped around Midgard, the middle realm. At one point, the serpent kind of indirectly attacked Midgard. And what does that mean? Well, the serpent got into a battle with Thor, and because of that, it caused all kinds of weather fluctuations upon the Earth. But for this one, most people weren't exactly aware what was happening. Maybe that's what's happening all the time with the weather. Thor and that serpent just don't get along. Number 2, storm. Come on, keep reaching. Be sure to stretch, feel the burn. Okay, but for real, think about it. Storm has the ability to control the weather, the natural innate mutant ability within her. She can and has bent it to her whim. This is all fine and dandy when you're dealing with a good storm. But an evil storm who could just destroy you with a thought, that's pretty scary. She could create a blight, drought, any other kind of storm. She is Mother Nature. A fear of that is not irrational. Storm has sent enemies into space before. Space. And then at number 1, you were waiting for it, the big one, you knew it had to be on this list, it's the Gotham Earthquake. This was huge. In the wake of a giant earthquake, Gotham was transformed into what was called No Man's Land, which then became what the Ark was called. It was cut off from the rest of the world, and the supervillains divided it into different territories, and Batman had to work to try and bring the city back together and also rebuild his family relationships because he decided that he was going to do all this by himself. No thanks, Superman, who did offer to help. But he did end up reuniting with the Bat family and adding some new members, like Cassandra Cain. This is the arc where she appears. So not only do you have all of that going on, but then you have the actual realities of just the city being destroyed by a natural disaster and the aftermath. It's a unique arc because, again, superheroes don't usually deal with this kind of stuff, but they found a way to still make it stay within the genre vein and tackle all of these issues. So those were 10 natural disasters to hit the superhero world. If there are any others that you wish we had talked about, of course, let me know down below. And thanks so much for sticking with Top 10 Nerd as we deal with all of these changes and these times. Really appreciate all of you guys. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.